Good morning. How should I describe my mom? How would you describe my mom? Well, that's easy. How about these words? Caring, compassionate, spiritual, character, integrity, bubbly, generous, over the top. Any of these ringing a bell? They sound like my mom? How about larger than life, magnetic personality, always give them more than they expect, outwardly focused, in control. Controlling, perhaps? Usually in a good way, of course. Always in a good way. Allow me to illustrate some of these points. Pay her a compliment, she would instinctively flip the switch with a smile and would begin asking about you. Pay her a sincere compliment about something she's wearing, she would stop, remove it, hand it over to you, and say something like, "Oh, please, just take it. I have another one. I'm so glad you love it." Of course, she would just say that to the person so they wouldn't feel bad about it, but she didn't have another. Conversations were not just to chat and laugh and catch up and those types of things. Conversations were a way for her to learn, her way of discovering what you like, what's important to you, how she could help. Mom missed her call, as you heard, as an event planner and a baker. Details were always well covered and double-checked and triple-checked, and at the end there would be a final check, sometimes a final check. For example, her events were spectacular, but she was fiscally challenged, let's say. She didn't always stay within the budget. However, those she helped never realized it. She would frequently downplay and say, oh, she had already had a lot of the items in hand, when in fact she knew the budget wouldn't cover everything. But if she was taking it on, she expected things to be as nice as they could be. So she would go out and make those extra purchases to make sure that it was extra nice. And then she would just justify it with my dad by saying how critical it was to have the extra things on hand for future parties. So, her angle was that it was a good investment. And it worked for her. It made total sense to her. And what's Dad going to say? So he would just agree. If you're expecting 20 or 30 guests, expect Mom to have enough food on hand for 150. You see, she always wanted to make sure that she was prepared, but also, what if the turnout was greater than expected? And she also didn't want anyone to go hungry. She didn't want anyone to hold back because it was the last piece. So there was always plenty of food being served, and she always thought from a place of abundance, never a scarcity mentality. As my cousin Rich put it last night, in your mom's mind, if you're running a little low, you're running out. Other than moving away from me in 1993, I think my family's transition to Texas was good for her, because everything's big in Texas, so how could you not like that? And if you've ever seen the size of her Rice Krispie treats, her cookies, her brownies, you know exactly what I mean. Or how about those many loaves of that special pumpkin bread? And we're not talking about a whole bunch of mini loaves. Oh no, we're talking about full size, lots of extra cream cheese, frosting, because that's the best part, in her opinion. It was like saying, give the people what they want with her pumpkin bread frosting directions, and so she always made sure they were loaded up. Even in the hospital, she continuously thanked the doctors and nurses, the technicians, the cleaning ladies. She would tell them how great they were and how lucky she was to have them. She always had the attitude of gratitude, even in the hospital bed. That reminds me of a quick story. Two quick ones. Let me get back to that controlling attribute for just a moment. How many of you have received a yummy recipe shared on Facebook by my dad? Well, let me explain. I assure you it wasn't my dad. One day, my mom had enough. Facebook was just too overwhelming. These interactions that were expected, the conversation that was expected, the return chatter was simply too much for her, and she just didn't have the stamina. And Facebook was starting to occupy too much of her time, create too many demands, obligations. Facebook was controlling her. And so she showed Facebook. She deleted her account. Well, let me tell you, that plan was hers, and she was in control, but it lasted about 2 days. That's when Barbara hijacked Mark's account. So Barbara becomes Mark, and the rest, as they say, is history. And FYI, my dad's not big on sharing recipes on Facebook. And while we're on that controlling subject, I've got one more for you. One of the perks of the ICU is that they have warm blankets. Not electric blankets, and Mom loved her electric blankets. But they had a blanket warmer. And one day I requested a warm blanket from Mom. Nurse Maria said I was lucky because it was the last one in the warmer. I covered my mom and told her how lucky she was to have that last warm blanket. I was expecting her normal appreciative self, but instead, she insisted I march right back over to the nurse's station and check to be sure that they had a crew working on refilling the blanket warmer. God forbid they run low or run out of warm blankets, not on her clock. So I went back and giggled to Maria about it. I said, Mom's definitely improving today. She instructed me to check to be sure the blanket replenishment is in progress. And Maria was just so great. She recognized my mom's need to be in control. And she smiled with her British accent. She said, that's really a good sign, Mark. Your mom is planning ahead. She said, once a nurse, always a nurse. You tell Barbara we're on it with those blankets. And it made my mom's day to know that she was keeping the ICU on track that day. Many of you know my mom and dad developed quite a reputation as givers, particularly when it came to baked goods, both in and out of the hospital. When admitted to the ICU this time around, we had a regular visitor from cardiology downstairs. Nurse Angela is a dear friend of the family. In fact, my parents said they were adopting her, so she became known as Sis. When she got word that Mom was admitted, she came right up to check in with us, and she immediately texted down to Mom's cardiologist, Dr. Childs, who's here today. The text read, and I quote, "Cookie lady, ICU." Dr. Childs was up within 15 minutes to check on us. Despite my mom's need to be in control of every situation, she hit a point about 12 years ago, a turning point, a discovery that she was no longer in control. And while being spiritual, it was at this point she really began to rely on her faith in Jesus. I'm not here to tell anyone in this audience what to believe, but just know that my mom believed. And once she really, truly leaned into her faith, many doors started opening, and she witnessed what she believed, what we believed, to be true miracles. I'd like to tell you about a series of events that contributed to my mom's 11-year miracle journey. First of all, this is what I call the miracle of Uncle Dick. In August 2005, my mom was noticing changes in her stamina and breathing. She was misdiagnosed 5 times, undiagnosed 1 time, and she was desperate to know what was wrong and how to treat it. No doctor was accurately able to diagnose her, and her breathing was rapidly declining. She felt like she was running out of time. Dr. Jim Curley was a pulmonologist friend Mom knew from working at Fort Hood. He retired from there, and he started a sleep center in Georgetown, Texas. At his recommendation, she would seek out an appointment at National Jewish Medical Research Center, a medical institution in Denver, Colorado, that sees the rarest of the rare. And she was sure to have all the answers if she went there. Most of you know my mom had a very special gift for making things happen. But despite her best efforts, there was an 8-month wait list and absolutely no chance for an appointment even a day sooner with or without a doctor referral. She was devastated. She was hopeless, said lots of prayers, and on a whim, she decided to call her oldest sibling, Uncle Dick. She wanted to fill him in on the bad news of her declining health. What did Uncle Dick say? "Did you say National Jewish? I was on the board of directors there for 10 years. Let me see what I can do." And lo and behold, Mom and Dad were in Denver 2 weeks later and had an accurate diagnosis within 30 minutes. Bronchiolitis obliterans. Sound awful? Most certainly is. The doctor described it as a rare, progressive, irreversible terminal disease. The only hope for survival would be a lung transplant. This was in June 2006, and they said she would be lucky to make it to Halloween without a transplant. Oh, and they said, good luck getting a transplant because you have to meet and be approved by a special board anywhere you go, pass lots of tests, get your weight down, and of course, how do you lose weight if you can barely breathe, let alone exercise? By the way, if you are listed, the wait time for a donor organ is usually about 2 years, they said. And the news was devastating. My mom and dad flew back from Denver in tears. The next I call the miracle of the angel doctor.